we got a lot to discuss in regarding the situation with Steven. It seems like Homeboy has gone crazy when it comes to this whole Narc situation. There's a lot of things that Steven says that make sense, and there are some things that I'm going to comment on as well, because at the end of the day, I'm not here to ride anyone. I'm here to talk the shit that I want to talk, and if I find that, Narc is wrong about something, I'm going to call that out. If I find Steven's wrong about something, I call that out too. However, though, he does make a lot of good points. Let's go into the VOD together.
Yeah. Each interactable object is governed by what's called our artisanship service. And it's a way that you kind of create this dynamic server grid where you pull as many processes off of an individual Unreal Engine game server, and instead you have those governed by a service that lives off of the game server and that game servers can talk to. So now I can start chopping this tree that I have a certain level.
Okay.
But this tree is governed by an area that is under our Riverlands artisanship service. So the trees that are currently in the desert biome can't yet be interacted with because we haven't extended that service into the desert biome.
I see. So there's basically
and
let's say
we told players
you have there's like
it.
a middleman that's like not available, so you can't do the interaction. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's generally correct. So these assets are done. I mean, they are created. What needs to be hooked up is the artisanship service, right?
And once the artisanship service gets hooked up, then all of the trees and everything will be interactable.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
So basically, he's explaining the artisanship services on how the foundation of these harvestable materials in the deserts will be accessible at some point, especially through this node progression that we're in, since we are building upon the expansion of the desert. And eventually, when that time does come, within the next couple months, how I was explaining in my last video too, that from January to May, we're going to have a severe growth through the desert, through the expansion of it, and we're going to be able to have more accessibility without it breaking other parts of Vera within the world. Because here's the thing, if the system has any issues or something does not go right or correct and it breaks a chain of other systems in place to access other materials, let's say in the areas near Miralith, the areas near Hasselon or Joeva or New Alia and Winstead, any of the other nodes, that it's going to cause a much more problem in development, and they're going to have to push things back, especially in phase 2, more than likely to phase 3, which could potentially cause a headache as well. So they need to make sure that these interconnected systems work in place and are ready to ship out for this phase, and everything at that point should be harvestable in the near future.
He mentioned that it's a copy paste of the Riverland. That's because the way that nodes exist is they exist on corks. So we have a number of different node layouts that are obviously intended that we are continuing to build, that the node team is building. But those node layouts aren't fully online yet. So we use in these corks essentially the node templates that we have available until such time as the new templates become available, and we will replace these nodes with those new templates. That's how development exists.
So in this situation, Narc actually has a really good argument here that the nodes are a copy and paste of what we've already seen already in a lot of other towns and all the other nodes that are already fully developed and, accessible towns that you could walk through, right? And the reason why they are copy and paste is because the node team is working on the court system, so they can have a new template put in place there once the progression of the desert happens within this phase in particular. That's why I was so gung-ho about Narc's video on why I felt like it would have been a stronger situation if everything did not come to place at the end of May and we only still had these copy and pasted templates, which are copy and pasted templates of other nodes from the other places already in production, and we didn't get any new templates or designs for the desert area that gave it somewhat a different touch, a different vibe, so we could feel like, okay, this game is truly getting expanded upon with different visuals and from an artistic standpoint as well, that it makes it seem like it's a desert area and not just another area based in, the Riverlands.
The key takeaway that I have from the video is that he claims what we showed 2 years ago did not exist, and it does exist. It may not exist near the edge of the map or near even as you go into the deeper portions of the map, but all of this desert zone here, maybe not this desert zone down here, is complete. But regardless, like, the point of that is that this is still in development, and we have been very clear about that as part of our communications with the audience, that not everything is going to be complete in an alpha, and that I know that can be a difficult thing to communicate, to convey, but it is part of our process. It is part of the development of the game.
And so part of that is like he brought up that one image, and there was a dungeon, I think, or something like that, where it had like this really big tower in the middle.
It's called an Essence Geyser.
Okay.
So the Essence Geyser is a dungeon where a certain monster race that's called the Nagash live.
Okay.
And the Najash are essentially, sorry, not Nagash, Najash. The Najash are the serpent race, which is another development.
So the reason why that wasn't so the reason why that wasn't available to be seen was because the dungeon isn't in the game that exists in?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And we didn't show that in the preview either. We just showed the Essence Geyser itself, which is an asset that we created. That's the top of the dungeon, and we showed the monsters that go into the dungeon, but those aren't in the game either yet, because their dungeon's not in the game. Their animations are complete. Their behavior, some of their behavior trees are complete. Like there is a lot of it that's being worked in progress, and I think that's the biggest that's the biggest rub in my opinion. Is that it is easy to look at a development, and as much as we have communicated, which we have communicated probably, and I'm speaking from a gamer's perspective, more than I have seen any other MMORPG of our size in development with a following like ours, probably that I've ever seen.
So in this situation here, there's a serious gray area that's going on. We have Narc claiming that from 2 years ago in the previous showcase, nothing in the game at the current moment that we're at in the alpha exists whatsoever. He says that they're not even being developed or worked on. This is what from Narc said himself. And then we have Steven's claim saying that, the things that you do see here, these assets from the showcase are being shown. They are in the current stage of the alpha, and a lot of other assets to expand upon the desert in like the Oasis or Dune area are going to be implemented in the game and are being worked on from our team. And those assets that Narc made, claims against that they don't exist, like the towers and the dungeon and the new Nagash race, those assets are being worked on and are being further developed. That's what Steven is saying. Now, the thing is, here's my take. We are in the current node progression. I mentioned this already in last video and then a topic before in this video as well, that we are in node progression. We have to get to May to see if these things come to fruition, because if they don't come to fruition and it's falsified upon, then at that point I'd make a further video saying, okay, what's actually going on, Steven? Are these assets, almost fully developed? Are they ready to go? Or are they being pushed on to phase 3? Which at that point we would have a better conversation for. But I think right now in this current situation, I think there is no right party here. I think it's better communication that needs to be had from, Steven's end. And the false claims of saying that things don't exist from Narc is just too much of an outburst. So those, are the points of where I stand on in this current situation.
They sometimes can sell negativity, because if you look at Narc's videos, and this is not just Narc, by the way, I'm not just trying to pick on Narc. This is something that is true of content creators and influencers in general, right? Is that there is certain types where they want to sell negativity because it sells best. And Narc is a great example, because if you look at his videos where he's praising the game, they have 10,000 views, they have 15,000 views, right? They have something that is not the equivalent of the videos where he's criticized or where he's lobbed baseless accusations against the game, like his most recent one that has now 150,000 views and over probably 1 million views that'll get megaphone by you reviewing it as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And he talks about a conflict in interest for the referral program, which, by the way, many products, many companies, many services have a referral system. But the reality of it is, if you talk about conflict and interest, for a content creator to be incentivized by ad revenue, they are going to want to create content that yields the most amount of views and the most amount of engagement. But here's the part that gets missed by a lot of people, is that there are actual human beings behind the screen that are devoting their 100 hours a week at times to build something where it matters to us very much, the public's reception, the public's perception, and that is why we create these things. And to see someone say something like, they lied to us, it doesn't exist, it's not in the game, when he has no basis for fact there. The fact of the matter is that some percentage of the 150,000 views that he's already garnered with that video will not see that truth afterwards. They will walk away. They may not watch the follow-up video,
Yep.
right? That's how media works. That's how marketing works. That the same is true for a viewer, right? If a person walks away with a now what you've described as a confirmation bias, with an opinion that they formed based off the video that they saw, and they don't get to see the follow-up, they get to go ping pong that on Reddit. They get to go ping pong that in the comment section of another video. They get to go ping pong that in the Twitch viewers, and then that spreads to other people. Now, Narc made some very definitive statements that are inaccurate and false. And I would be well within my rights to act upon that in a very legal manner. But I can't do that, obviously, right? That's not to my benefit. It's not what I want to do anyways, even though it defames and hurts me, and I can't control what that bias is. And now I'm forced to roll around in the mud.
Whoa. Dude, hold up. Let's not get to this point now. No need to sue anyone, all right? Let's not get that crazy about the situation at the current moment. Let's relax right now, Steven. I know you're emotional. You're hot right now. Settle down, sir. I'll say what I said. We'll pack you a Minecraft, good sir. Editor, make sure we're on that. However, though, at the current situation, we do realize that, yes, he is pretty emotional at this time. And I do understand that, Steven feels like that, when you're dragging someone's name through the mud, especially the 200 plus people in his company, it's not a good, look, right, for Intrepid Studios, and especially from a content creator that is, making a lot of these claims, saying that anything that they are working on is being lied to, and he feels like the company is lying to everyone that Narc was promoting the game to in the first place for the past 4 years of how he built upon his channel on Ashes of Creation. So it's a big claim, and I can understand why Steven is, pretty fired up about this current situation. I would be, heated too if someone's making false claims against me and I was in jeopardy of, being in trouble with my company or something of that nature, unless those claims were legitimate and real and this game was already out and none of that stuff existed, then Steven would be in some serious shit. So that's a whole nother, reality. If that ever did come to fruition, that could be a whole problem. However, though, that's not the case here, and it's a lot of just he said, she said situation. So I really feel like that I understand Steven's emotional about this certain situation, but I think he needs to just chill out. It doesn't need to get to that point where we're suing anyone. I do understand, though, how he talks about the point that negativity does sell, because it is true. When people make negative videos, especially on the internet, and it's a majority of just drama baiting, clickbaiting, and just hating on something, people like to hate. It's easier to hate than it is to appreciate, and we all know that, And it does suck that it's just the way the internet kind of works nowadays, and people are always interested on the latest drama, clickbaity topic. And it's just the way the world is working in the current state that we live in 2025. So it is what it is. I do wish, though, that, these issues just move on and, we can move past a lot of these things. And, hopefully Narc, if he ever chooses to, play Ashes again one day, and maybe him and Steven have a better connection with one another. But at the current time, obviously, there's still a lot more things to discuss. So let's go.
How do you feel about the way that Narc feels about the communication? Because I think that there's been a lot of people that have felt.
Look, if Narc had made a video that said, "Hey, I think you should have communicated this better, and I think you should have communicated that better," 100%. That's the whole fucking point of us being open about the transparent in the first, the process of development in the first place. That constructive criticism. Not going on his stream and calling people who support the game autists and retards and banning them and just acting like a complete degenerate, right? And because, and again, I'm not trying to make any ill will towards Narc.
Sure.
Yes, I'm super pissed about the fact that he went and made a video that was completely defamatory. But the reality of the matter is that we never engaged with Narc from a company's perspective as a content creator. Why? Because his brand was not the brand that we wanted to engage with about the game. Now, of course, that's a big conflict for us because he was creating content about the game, and some of those videos and content were great.
Yeah,
but some of them were not. And some of them did not match what we wanted our brand to be. And I got a lot of flack internally from my own marketing and community team when I would even talk and engage with Narc because they're saying, "Hey man, this guy is not a good dude." And I would say, "Okay, well,
I mean, this is just marketing and PR people are always
100%.
They are so careful. I'm fully aware of that. Yeah, people getting banned on Reddit for
that's so false. That's another thing that was absolutely crazy. So let me tell you.
So people aren't getting banned.
Here, listen. So you know this very well. Narc was in a stream for 4 days straight, playing at the beginning of phase 2. He was running a subathon.
Yeah.
And in the subathon, it was a total hate fest, right? And he had a pretty solid 300 viewers. Anybody who was watching can corroborate this. This is true. And those viewers were all just kind of, hate baiting each other.
Yeah.
And they would go on the Reddit, and they would make statements with their Reddit, and they would say things like, "This game is 100% scam. What they're doing is fake. This isn't real. They should be shut down." All these types of things, right? And so over the course of December, there were probably 7 people that got banned, and the only reason they got banned is because they violated our respect each other rule. There was one thread that got locked out of 10 different threads that were about Narc. One
that
got
was
locked
the desert
because it was
one,
just
right?
hate fest. There were 7 desert threads.
Okay.
You can go on our Reddit and look at the 7 different desert
And why
threads.
do you think there were so many desert threads? Because it feels to me like that's a really big point of contention.
Well, the majority of them, I don't want to say necessarily all.
Yeah,
the majority of them, in my opinion, were from Narc's stream, because again, he was running a 4-day long stream, and the desert was a big point of topic for him.
Now, in this certain situation, we get to see behind the closed doors of what was going on with Narc and Intrepid Studios, and his relationship with them, and how they didn't really want to be aligned with the way he went about his content. Now, as a content creator, I can understand what it's like being positive and negative about certain situations, depending on the content that you're working on, or if you're playing, hardcore for one company only, whether it's like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy. Sometimes you're going to be positive and negative about certain things, but in this situation, Narc kind of went super negative, made his claims, and then dipped, right? And I can understand why Steven is emotional about this, or he wants to defend his company, because you make all these claims, you get hundreds of thousands of, views that, leads to some good money for Narc. Let's not deny that. I can understand as a content creator that is a good thing. However, though, you leave this negative impact to close the door on Ashes to move on to something else, which I don't blame Narc to pursue his career into better things. But you can't do that to the company without thinking that they're not going to defend themselves and just leave a stain on Ashes of Creation to all your viewers who now think the game is a scam or some type of lie, when in reality that's not the facts. And there's no actual factual evidence that the game is a scam or a lie that, Narc is saying that he claims is not a scam, but at the same time, there was an underlying, the way he was toning from just the tone of his voice, that basically implied that this game is bullshit. Let's not kid ourselves, right? That's what Narc was getting at. However, though, I do see why they decide to not align themselves with Narc and rather align themselves with Pirate Software or Thor in this situation, because even if Thor is having criticism on something, he's not being, belligerent about it or being outbursty in this, certain situation. He would just have a calm discussion on what needs to be fixed and what he wants to see. Regardless of that, as far as the Reddit posts and, the claims that, Steven was banning people and, censoring, he wasn't doing any of that. A lot of the posts that were getting removed were just pure hate threads that had nothing to do with any constructive criticism. Even if it was like a negative Nancy post, he didn't ban any of those. It was just a lot of the posts that he's seen from Narc's viewership, especially during the subathon that Narc was happening or having during the 4-day span that he did for phase 2. And he removed some of those posts because they had no actual, growth topics to be discussed within those posts to actually further improve upon. They were just pure hate speeches on Ashes for no reason, and it was not warranted whatsoever. So let's continue from here.
Any one of your 40,000 viewers right now can go on our subreddit, and they can look through the history and see just how many constructive, critical posts there are about Ashes of Creation.
Okay.
I would even say that a healthy, probably half of that subreddit is reasons why a game design is bad, or reason why a system should be changed, or reason why the communication isn't good. I don't ban people at all. Our Discord is the same way. Like I have people constantly that'll ping me with feedback that's like, "Hey man, this is a terrible design. You shouldn't do this. The game's going to fail because of this." I don't ever respond to that in a negative way. That's the whole purpose of this development, is to garner that level of interaction with the community. That is what we have done for 8 straight years, It is a completely false narrative for anyone to say that.
Well, if I look at it and I look at the subreddit, it does seem like there's a lot of critical comments that are made, and these comments are not being deleted. So,
no, of course not. Like, well, first of all, you can go on to there are a number of different websites that you can go on to, and you can see if there are any deleted comments. Like that. I mean, that is just a factual truth.
Now, in this certain situation, I'm going to have to heavily agree with what Steven is going about here, because at the end of the day, you can have people come to your website, come to your subreddits, or wherever they're posting, and talk whatever shit that they want, as long as within due reason. You know, there's constructive criticism, you have actual intellectual thought backing your arguments, and it's, you know, for benefit of improving on the game, or thinking differently about the game, or just having conversations about, you know, Intrepid Studios in general, right? But the problem is that some of the posts that he was talking about and the issues with some of the lock posts that were happening was a lot of hate coming from Narc's viewership. And the people that were watching his stream, as he was saying, there was like, you know, it was basically a hate parade of people just hating. And that has no benefit for Ashes of Creation. There's no discussion or actual intellectual honesty to have a real good debate on where we can improve, where Intrepid Studios is going wrong, what Steven is, you know, making these decisions right or wrong. We can't have actual discussion from that. So I can understand, even as a content creator, I remember even Pirate Software saying this too, if somebody was just like talking completely reckless and there was no actual, you know, speech to happen from that or discussion to happen from that, I would just ban them, remove them. It's just like content creators who just ban people from Twitch chats if they're saying just nonchalant, dumb things that have nothing to do with the topic, right? So you just remove them. So I don't see a problem with this whatsoever. You can go on Reddit right now on their subreddits and talk whatever shit you want with due reason and make sense of the shit you're talking. They're not going to remove your posts. So I agree with Steven here.
If you put these points into context, look, I don't know what's going on with Narc. I don't know, you know, why he's come to these conclusions that he has. I have assumptions. My assumptions are it's because, you know, this is the reason of him wanting to farm views and engagement or whatever, and then maybe he'll do a redemption arc later, and that's like his master plan. Only thing I care about is that when someone makes false and defamatory statements and it gets 100,000 plus views, and then it gets 500,000 plus views, and it demeans the character of myself or the 230 plus families that I care that are putting their hearts and souls into this game, of which I put over $55 million of my own money into the development of this game. Yeah. There has never been a dime or profit that's been taken from this company in 8 years. When someone says that, it is utter, and pardon my French,
it's going to piss you off. It's bullshit.
It's complete fucking bullshit.
Well, all right, I'm going to ask you, like, I don't know if you can really give me the answer for this. Like, $55 million, there's no way you can make an MMO with $55 million. Like, how much money do you think it's going to take to make the game?
At least another 50 minimum. Like, I mean, at least another 50 I'll be on the hook for. Yeah. Minimum. And by the way, we've grown to 230 developers.
Yeah.
That's not 230 developers in the middle of Croatia.
Yeah.
That's 230 developers in the middle of San Diego, California, which is the most expensive part of the United States.
Yeah, it's like what is it, like
and I'll tell you another thing.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you another thing. I take care of my developers.
Yeah.
We give 100% health insurance for our developers, their spouses, and all of their children as well.
Yep.
And that's on a game that's not making profit.
Right.
So for someone to demean my character like this and to drag me through the mud this way is absolutely out of character and wrong. Okay. It is just wrong.
Well, there's a lot to talk about here. You know, I really feel like this situation does suck more than anything for both Steven and Narc, because I'm sure Steven doesn't have a personal vendetta against Narc. I just think he's more upset of how Narc handled the whole situation by throwing a brick through the window and not expecting any ramifications and then just dipping, you know? And he has every right to say what he wants to say, even if he's a little emotional, a little heated right now. I think Steven, obviously, he could calm down in certain, you know, responses that he is having, right? He doesn't need to get too outlandish with, like, the whole Sue thing, right? And I know we talked about that earlier. But from talking about his company's perspective and how he takes care of his entire company, how they're not seeing any profits as of yet, and they still need much more money to develop this MMO because it requires a lot of money to make MMOs, and their team's probably going to grow even more in the future. Obviously, if the MMO becomes more successful as they continue with the phases and they continue, you know, through the betas and then eventually through through the post development of the game. But what I'm getting at is that he has every right to say what he's saying right here. These things are completely warranted. I don't really have a problem with what he's talking about, of how he feels like he is getting, dragged through the mud once again, and they're having to be in a case where they have to defend themselves rather than just push with the development of the game and move to more positive things, right? So it's unfortunate, but I have to agree with Steven here and everything he is saying in this portion.
What do you think about like the 6 years of the game being an alpha? Because he said he did the math on it.
I think I said this at the start of this development.
Yeah.
I said that we are going to make this game in a way that we feel is right. A lot of games come out and they get worked on in the dark. How long did Throne and Liberty take to develop? 12 years.
You mean Lineage?
And Lineage 3,
yeah, exactly.
12 years. And by the way, this is no hate against NCSoft or their game. I think they did a great job. I'm just saying it took 12 years to make, and that was from an established major MMO RPG powerhouse to build a game like that. But it takes a long time to make a game, and it takes a real fucking long time to make an MMORPG, and multiply that by 10 when you're trying to do the level of complexity and systems that we are trying to do, which is fucking crazy.
No, so do you don't have like a time frame or anything for how long the alpha is going to last?
Do you know if I told you a time frame today and that time frame changed? What would happen? What would happen? You'd
be lying again. Yeah.
Exactly. I'd be a liar.
Yep. Okay.
I would be a liar.
So you don't want to get a time frame because then you're going to get nailed down for another video about you lying in the future. No, I think that's fair.
The other thing is, like, how can I give a time frame when we just started our Alpha 2?
Yeah.
The whole point of this fucking Alpha is to test everything. Right? And before we go into full onslaught production of these core systems, we need to test that, 1, they work, 2, players want them, and 3, whatever we need to do to make those systems work differently, we have time to do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point of Alpha 2. So, like, again, if you aren't interested in the development process of an MMORPG, my whole recommendation is chill, don't follow us, check in a year, in 2 years, whatever it is, get an average update every now and then.
So I find this very interesting right here too, because Narc made claims in his last response that the alpha's going to last 6 years. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case here whatsoever, and Steven goes into discussing about how the time frame and the resources and requirements on what it takes to create an MMO, and how they are not like a mega corporation like some of these other bigger MMO companies are, and how they are passionately funded from the ground up. And Steven put a lot of his money and his assets into the game, and there's a lot of people who has invested into this game as well, but it is still going through the phases and the testing, and especially with the reworks that happened from UE4 to UE5, which I still think was a good decision to put upon the UE5 assets, because if we really think about it, if they just pushed with UE4, the game definitely would have came out much sooner. I 100% agree on that aspect. But since we're on UE5 and they're reworking a lot of things, and we are pushing through Phase 2, which has actually been a really enjoyable phase so far, we are going through Phase 2 exponentially to see the growth of it and the expansion that we already discussed. And this things, that we have to test require time. I just think people get very impatient when it comes to this time, and they don't realize that this is what we are looking at from the outside in, from an open development end. So I can understand why he is saying everything that he's saying right now, and why he feels like that they can't give an ETA or an actual time frame of when something's going to happen. Because if you tell somebody something's going to happen, how many of you done this before? If you had with your mother, your father, brother, or sister, you tell somebody, oh, I'm gonna do this, and you don't do it, and then they get upset. Well, that's just one person getting upset. Imagine 100,000 of other people, or millions of people, getting upset at you at the same time. That leads to a lot of complication, and then there's media posts, and then there's negative publicity, which they don't want right now. They're obviously dealing with the whole Narc situation right now, and that's just one topic. Imagine a lot of those, right? So I think right now they're doing the best that they can. They're pushing with the phases as we go, and that's the most we can expect right now. I don't expect them to put down an ETA of what's going to happen. It is what it is, because the game's not ready yet, and we're still going through the alpha testing. So I think we could pursue from here.
But the reason I told Narc, like, and anyone else who was getting their tits in a twist, or excuse me, who were
it is what it is. Yeah, no, true. Yeah, for sure.
Who were getting their boxers in a bunch because of the development process. Go take a break. Take a break for your own mental. Let me tell you, developing this game has not been great for my mental health.
Yeah.
It sure is. I would not wish this level of engagement with the community, this level of complexity in the game development. I mean, you got to understand, I started this also 8 years ago without having any experience in development whatsoever, just being a lover of MMOs and wanting to make something that I like. Right. So like I had to run through the crucible on fire with my head on fire.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And
I understand.
And my recommendation is take a break.
Yeah.
Go take a break for your own mental health. That wasn't any dig on his mental health. I don't personally care about Narc too much to care what his mental health status is. I'm just suggesting to anyone that is too emotionally invested in our development process, go take a break. We will be here when you get back. This project is too large. I have put too much of an investment. I care too much, and so does our team, about its success for it to fail. And so because of that, we are going to do what's necessary, no matter the time it takes. Now, ultimately, I don't want to be in a 10, 12, 14-year-long development cycle. But another thing to keep in mind is that when people say, hey, it's been 8 years, that first year we were 12 people.
Yeah, sure.
We were 12 people. We were 25 people the next year. And then we were 40 people the year after that.
So right now, Steven's getting a little haywire. I mean, there's no need to talk about people and their mental health and all that stuff with Narc. I understand if you don't care about him. I mean, let's hope there's no personal vendetta. I don't think there is, but let's relax. Obviously, at the end of the day, you're probably heated. I understand that from the responses. There's no, actual hatred towards the person. But at the end of the day, you're doing what's best for you and your company. But you're basically telling people to hashtag chill and go get some Wendy's and come back in 4 years. I love that one. Settle down. I'll kiss you. Now, in Minecraft, editor, cut that out. However, let's stay on topic here. What I'm getting at is that I can understand his defenses, and him talking about his love for MMOs and making a passion project and how it takes a lot of time, more than people think. And there's not developers in my YouTube comment section that act like they know what it requires to make an MMO at this, grand capacity. They're not aware of, what that takes or what it requires. However, though, I will say that I think that he really cares about Ashes, and he wants to see this project get fulfilled and see the progression of it and how it's growing from its earlier stages to its beta stages and eventually post-development. So I can understand where he's coming from here. It's not really a lot to go off from. He's just, playing the defense card, which I totally understand. But besides that, just, brother, chill out. Let's stay on topic and let's actually continue talking about more of the game and obviously what's going on with Narc.
So we could go back to this old desert situation, right? About it being an expansion to the desert. Now, whenever you were talking about the expansion to the desert that was going to happen on December 20th, what is that? What?
That's the nodes. That's the node.
Okay.
So these three locations, you see this node that says Athanar, Sunhaven, and Asmara. Like those were nodes that didn't exist before the 20th. Okay. So this is the Sunhaven node. Okay. Right? And this
is one of, and this was added in the December. Okay. So this is correct. So to say that like there was nothing that was added, this was added.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. There were 3 nodes that were.
And there's 2 more of them besides this.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And they were encampments before this, and they were crossroads before that. So anybody that played it, they can come and they can see this. There's building sections here that a mayor can construct.
Is one of them called Asmarin? Because I think that's where a Narc was in the video.
Asmarin,
yeah. Can you go to that? Because like again, it's just about like this thing about it being on the edge of the map. To me, this might sound like some kind of like weird fixation, but like to me that matters a lot because it's like, was it or wasn't it,
But again, the key point isn't so much whether or not he was at the edge. That's fine.
Yeah,
maybe he was 100 meters off of the edge. I don't know. But regardless, the point is he showed side-by-side comparisons of our showcase from 2 years ago, and he said none of this is in the game. That is what he said.
Yeah.
He said none of this is in the game, and that's bullshit. I just released a video
that
showed
all what you're looking at right now. This is it. This was added into the game on December 20th.
Yes.
So basically what's going on right now is just the edge map theory, we'll call this, or discussion of what's going on, of what actually exists in the desert and what actually doesn't. And long story short, which I'm just going to TLDR this, what is really happening is that it's just simply a misunderstanding of communication from Intrepid Studios to its player base, and at the same time, it's wrong expectancies from Narc's point of view. Because the problem is, I think Narc expected that everything in the showcase was just going to be in the desert, and that's it, fully tested, ready to go. They were really fast on production, and I think that was wrong. And on Intrepid Studios' point of view, especially with Steven, right, I think that the communication on what was actually going to be in the desert expansion, since you were calling it expansion, can feel like a little bit of a white lie, right? And I'm not going to like ignore that, because at the end of the day, it feels like that this stuff was already in the game, but it really wasn't in the game at the same time. It's going to be further implemented within the game through the node progression. And if anybody wasn't really staying on top of those dev interviews, or really listening to those interviews or showcases, or following any posts in the Discord when any updates, people wouldn't know that. They would just expect a desert expansion and see everything that you saw from the previous showcase to already be in the game. So I feel like people were just confused more than anything. It's really a mislead of communication versus wrong expectancies, and I think that was the problem here.
In the dungeon you're talking about, the Najash dungeon that has that Essence Geyser, the Essence Geyser asset is complete, but the asset kit that's used to actually build the interior of that dungeon is obviously something that we're still working on.
Okay.
The Najash monsters and whatnot have been worked on, and those models we've shown, and that's the whole point of our development update that we do every single month, right? The whole part of us showing all of these assets getting created, the whole point of that is so that we can get player feedback before we move into mass production, which is an alien idea for many people, for many developers, for many publishers, because of course you can run into situations like the one we're currently in, which is where, hey, a lot of people who are witnessing the game that are very, we have millions of registered users that are interested in Ashes of Creation, because for 8 years we've been very public about its development, which is a good thing. That's the good side of the sword, is that we don't have to spend any money on advertising. We don't have to spend any money on marketing. There is a cost that comes with us needing to each month kind of prepare something to be shown to the public. That's why we have a community team. That's why we have Margaret, who heads up that team, right, in the communications team. And a lot of development teams don't like having to kind of, to essentially having that exposure
to do regular updates,
undone.
Because there's also like there's a degree of accountability with it. No,
absolutely,
I can easily see
absolutely. And the biggest concern is that like something changes and the community puts you on a flail for it.
Yeah, of course.
Right, where it's like, oh, you promised this and now it's not a thing anymore. Well, the whole gambit, the whole gamble of this approach is that we can be open about the changes, and we can foster some degree of understanding from our community when those changes happen for the game. Like, isn't that what we want to see, rather than getting something we had no idea about on day one, hating it, and then the game fails, and now, boom, that game is gone.
Now, I think it's very interesting what Steven's saying here. He's really talking about, like the mass production of stuff, and he's talking about, the issues with promising stuff, at the same time, the open development, and how they welcome people in to discuss a lot of these things on what's going on internally, with the development team, and the thoughts and decisions into making things work, and how open development also is a bit of a risk too, because you have people that get too connected to things, and they get too hooked into things, and it makes it feel like things are either finalized, and if something doesn't follow up or come into fruition, they feel like it's a false promise, when in reality development changes and it goes through cycles, and things need to be either changed, sometimes either for the worse or better, or just get simply improved upon. And I think the more we come to an understanding of these things, the more we can figure out where this game is going to be, how we keep pushing as an open development playtester, and understand that things are always subject to be changed no matter what, and as long as these things are clearly communicated from the development team with Steven and the showcases, we would have like a better understanding of where we're going to be at as a game in the next couple months, either from another play test or another beta, eventually into the full development when the game is out.
Let me tell you another big thing. One other thing that is really sets my bullshit radar off.
Okay.
He says, that he doesn't agree with the pricing.
That was the big thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And that's totally fine. Like, this is specifically priced in part to restrict the number of people who are participating in this alpha, because it's not for everybody. In addition, we have to pay for servers to host at a minimum 1 year's worth of time that our alpha is going to be live.
Mm-hmm.
And that $100 goes to pay for that 1 year's worth of what would normally be a subscription.
Sure.
1 year's worth of what must normally be a subscription. And then on top of that, we're giving 1 month subscription with it. And we're also giving access to all the betas. So I get it. People don't want to pay that money. That's fine. We literally tell people, do not buy the alpha. This is not a game. This is not for you. You will lose nothing by not participating in our alpha. Mm-hmm. The game will launch and you cannot pay a box price for it. We don't even have a box price, which is, in my opinion, the best monetization model.
Well, that's the biggest like injection. Yeah, of course.
Correct. So anybody that goes out there and says this is a scam, I am telling you that this game that I've sunk $55 million or more into over the course of the last 8 years, myself personally, so far, and will have to put in another 50 probably.
Yeah.
That you should not buy the game, and we have a 90-day refund policy on these $100 alpha keys.
Yeah.
And we do not have a minimum time requirement if people want a refund.
Uh-huh.
If you want a refund and you go in and you play this and you play our alpha and you test our alpha and you test it for 10 hours, 15 hours, we are granting those refunds because we don't want people to be upset about that. So it is total fucking bullshit that the statements that the way he represented us and the game in his video. And again, I don't want to pick on Narc. Like, okay, dude,
sure,
go play another game. Go enjoy your content creator career.
Yeah.
Go play Dark Souls. Do you? This is your life, brother. You go do you. But you lit a match and you threw it behind you and you said, fuck you, Steven, fuck you, Ashes, and fuck you, developers. And that's fucked up.
So let's just say it's getting a little hot right now. Steven's getting a little crazy. He has every right to be, but he's getting a little crazy. He's been getting a little nuts during this whole interview. I will say that right now. With that being said, talking about, the pricing issues and, the stuff that, people get weary about, obviously, when it comes to how much something costs. And listen, I totally understand. When I made a full, documentary style video on Ashes of Creation, which is on my channel, it was a really good video. And I was talking about basically what it was like coming from, WoW to Ashes as a World of Warcraft player and, getting involved with it. And I remember seeing the pricing the first time around, and I was scared of, the $500 price tag, the founder packs, and the $120 to either be involved if you did get the founder pack, or what price you wanted to really get to get the keys. And then they had that issue during the time where they weren't offering the beta with the alpha and you had to pay separate, but then they changed their mind that then you can get the key and get the alpha, beta, and a month early access with the game coming out in post development for a subscription base, since there's no box priced model. And I'll say this, now the more I thought about it, because as a Fortnite player, when I used to play Fortnite back in the day, and WoW and Counter-Strike and Valorant, I bought so many skins and I played those games so many hours. I spent more money on those games than I've ever even done with Ashes of Creation with just the $120 price tag. So I'm not really mad about the pricing. The more I thought about it, the more that was clear cut in my mind. Obviously, there's going to be in-game microtransactions. Every game is kind of doing that nowadays. I don't care anymore because it is what it is. But nothing from those microtransactions are going to benefit the player and any gameplay advantage and make you feel like that you want to quit the game because you feel like it's just pay to win. None of that stuff is going to happen. They're not following that style of a model. They're simply, having a subscription-based, game, which, whatever, $15-20 a month. I don't care. I think it's like 15 on their website, they said. Regardless, though, that is not really an issue. And I don't understand why Narc was really upset about that problem there when he didn't pay for the game. He got the key provided to him. Someone gave him the key, one of his viewers or whoever. He got the key. He never paid for it. I think he was more upset that he felt like he lied to his community and other people had to spend money on the game on his behalf. But I don't think he lied to anybody at the end of the day, and I don't think there's an issue with the pricing whatsoever. People will say $120 is crazy, $150 is crazy, $500 is crazy. How much money have you ever spent in a game within a year time span without lying? Let's be honest about this in the comments below. If it was like, a MOBA or Counter-Strike or Valorant or, Call of Duty with skins in those games, you know what I mean? How much money have you really spent during gaming where it equivalates the hours that you played a game for? So I think there's a bigger discussion to happen with that topic right there.
This is our Snail.
That's the mount, right? The blue one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very rare snail.
Okay.
Its name is a wisp whelk. And you can walk around on the wisp whelk. I'm going a little fast.
Okay, so this is the one exactly from the video. Yeah.
Yep. And not only that, the snail is a little horse snail. We call it a snorse. Right? It still has some textures that need to be added. It's missing some mats that I think unfortunately got stomped when we did a master material update on the saddle. But you can take the snail and you can press period here and it'll turn into a little snail. You know, a lot of the things that Narc said about Pirate are just totally unfair and demeaning as well. And I think that it's important. The biggest takeaway that I have when it comes to these types of interactions is that we're all part of the same ecosystem and genre of player groups.
Yeah.
We have all been, I went on your show back in 2020 when I was driving to Vegas, and I made the statement that as an MMO player, we all feel like a bunch of beaten dogs.
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
And that is still to this day very true, and we all know this because of some of the games that have recently released. There is some level of camaraderie that should be had within our community as MMORPG gamers, because the only way that we're going to get games that answer the calls of things that we want, which is not gotcha quality of life bullshit monetization, which is not pay to win, which is not undermining the player achievement in game and integrity, like those are the core tenets that I think are most important when it comes to actually bringing in an MMORPG to today's market, that I think a lot of developments and a lot of publishers are still getting wrong. And we can be supportive of each other. The tribalism doesn't need to exist. A game doesn't need to call to you aesthetically, visually, or mechanically in order for you to say, hey, I wish that game does well.
So, in conclusion of everything, basically, they talk about the snail asset and how that was a thing in the previous showcase that Narc was basically saying doesn't exist whatsoever, which it shows that it does. Steven was displaying it. It just needs some texture improvements. But there's a lot of other assets, I bet you, that are going to come in the next couple months during this playtest through the no progression that we're going to see from the showcase that, Narc was also discussing about. In regards of, his issues with Thor, I'm not too sure why he doesn't like Thor. Maybe he just doesn't like the way he defends Ashes of Creation. It is what it is. That's more of a personal bias I don't want to comment on too much between him and, Thor and, Narc. But besides that, I will say Steve goes on about just, us as gamers having to come in arms together with, being respectful about projects and understanding development and understanding that the MMO scene as well is a bunch of beaten dogs, as he said, which he's not wrong about, because, we have been burnt by a lot of other companies, that we've played for, where we feel like, the game is just not heading in a good state, the class balancing is off, the itemization's not really good, a raid or a mob is not fun to fight against, etc. And there's thousands of issues that we can complain about, or botting, whatever, right? Especially in WoW, that where my expertise comes from a lot is World of Warcraft, and I've played other MMOs as well. But I've even seen a lot of failures, especially back in the day when I used to play DC Universe Online, was actually an MMO I played in 2011, like the early days. And I remember them as a company, them just falling apart too, and not living up to a lot of things that they said they were going to do, and then the company feeling more like a cash grab, right? Which was a damn shame. But regardless of my past, what I'm getting at is that I understand the MMO community feels like really, I guess we have a bad taste in our mouth and we distrust a lot of people. But I will say this, so far in this open development, me as a player, I'm enjoying Ashes of Creation. I'm enjoying the process of what we're going through. And I just look forward to the future. So whatever happens, happens. And I can only, wish the best for all other playtesters that are enjoying the game as well. And I hope we just all try to make the best of the situation, and we look forward to the positives. And when those negatives do come, we can discuss them as a community and try to overcome these, loops and hurdles. Regardless of that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know it's a freaking long one. I have a lot of, discussions to do with the editor, but much love to you. Lock it in. Keep on keeping on. All that good stuff. And I'll see y'all amigos in the next one. I've been taking fiber gummies lately because I'm not gonna lie, Papa Tello has been shitting like crazy, and I need to shit a little bit more healthier. So pop 3 of these in your mouth, swallow them, and then put the other 3 right up your ass.